Charl? Charl? It's dark and I want to go home. Are you still here? Charl? Where are you? You were my ride here. Hey, what are you still doing here, man? The store closed like an hour ago. It's 1 a.m. Go home. But I don't care. Get out of here so I can close up. If you're quick, you can get a bed at the shelter before the drunks take them. Get lost. Charl? You know, it feels like I'm forgetting about something. It'll probably come back to me in a bit. How's it going, everyone? I'm supposed to be working on doing videos for all the remaining Stalker games right now for Halloween in July, but I'm having a bit of trouble with them, so I decided to take advantage of a head cold that you still might be hearing in my voice right now, and play a little bit of Weird West, which is gone live as of last week. I accidentally played the whole game over the weekend, which isn't just me trying to make up for lost time, as I'm not one of those cool YouTubers that gets access to games in advance for their videos. I still got a ways to go to get that kind of street cred. That being said, Weird West is easily my favorite game that Devolver Digital has published since Hotline Miami. No disrespect to anything else they've put out over the last literal decade because they've had some bangers. It's just that Weird West really clicks with me and I enjoyed the premise a lot. In case you didn't know already, Weird West is an immersive sim that takes a genre that's not a genre to new places, mainly the isometric perspective. You can tell that it's an immersive sim because you can stack objects in-game and also because people will aggressively debate whether or not it's immersive sim with the kind of takes that inflict 1d4 psychic damage on me every time I read them. Honorable mention goes to Charlatan et al. On the Parapedia Discord, who recently severed my divine light by force after introducing me to Abermore. But that's a video for another time. Weird West is the debut game of WolfEye, a studio founded by pillar of the ImSim community, indie band member, and disagreeer with my takes Raphael Colantonio, who you might know as one of the founders of Arcane, creators of Dishonored, The Cool Prey, and Arx Fatalis. Now that both Deathloop and Weird West are out, we can really see the game design ideologies of both Colantonio and the rest of Arcane, and the TLDR is that both games are plenty experimental with trying to change up the ImSim format, but I like what Weird West did a lot better than Deathloop, with no disrespect to the work of a post-Colantonio Arcane. Their stuff just didn't quite hit this time around, whereas I really liked what WolfEye did. So you start the game as a retired bounty hunter turned homesteader named Jane who blacks out for a bit or has a weird dream. I can't quite remember it. It kind of looks like a little of the both. And now she has this crazy mark on her neck and that some dude just came to her house, kidnapped her husband, and killed her kid. That's not very nice. Oh yeah, and there was some kind of weird robe dude doing stuff just before this. We'll get to that later. Jane goes off to dig up her old bounty hunting pistol, which totally sucks because it can't be upgraded, so you'll pretty much immediately replace it with the first thing you find. Jane learns that this is a work of the infamous Stillwater gang, who are now in the employ of an entity known as a Siren, an SCP-96 looking thing that has a diet primarily consisting of people. Time to do a little law bringing. You're gonna be spending the most time as Jane because this is where you're gonna learn how Weird West works. It's kind of walking a tightrope between a CRPG and an ARPG, which in the year of our algorithm 2022 are nearly as pointless of descriptions as Immersive Sim is, but screw it, I'm gonna stack some boxes and they use 0451. Fight me! We'll get more into the emergent gameplay later. For now though, let's talk about what you're going to be doing a lot of: traveling and random encounters. The Weird West uses the same map for all 5 characters, which is a bunch of locations you travel across in a map with random encounters happening along the way. Think old school Fallout and you've got the right idea. What are the encounters in the Weird West? Well, there's the witch, getting ambushed by whatever faction is currently acting as an antagonist, which over the course of the game, some factions who are friendly to one protagonist will be the enemy and vice versa. Spooky things like wraiths, zombie things, and cave terrors, which are basically big old monsters that soak up all your bullets. Oh yeah, and bears. Like a lot of bears. Encounters can be good or even ambiguous too, such as the wandering trade caravans, which are the only place you can buy and sell trinkets, or the witch again. Traveling takes a while, and some of your quests are time sensitive, so getting your hands on a horse can become a top priority. What's even better about having the horse though, is that it also acts as a mobile storage unit and gives you the option to just keep riding whenever some encounters come up. Unfortunately, you can't avoid being ambushed or bears for some reason, so always be ready in the West. Despite the inherent danger of traveling, it's entirely in your best interest to explore the Weird West, as the only places that will be revealed to you are things directly involved in your quest, and there's a lot of good stuff out there like mines and non-story important cities where you can get some good loot or pick up more bounties. Sometimes it takes getting pretty close to an area to find stuff, so you'll likely end up finding new stuff when traveling later on in the game thanks to taking different paths. Don't worry though, you also, you don't have to re-reveal the map between characters, just you already know because reasons we'll get into later. What's really going to help reveal a lot of the map, and is also your bread and butter in Weird West, is bounty hunting. Bounty hunting is not only an easy source of money, but also one of the most reliable ways to get your reputation up. Reputation is pretty important in Weird West as it lets you get stuff for cheaper, keeps you out of trouble with the law, and also will allow you to recruit certain high-level followers for free. Bounties are essentially your another settlement needs your help quests in the Weird West, but also are the safest way to play around with new tactics since, well, it's a bounty. They're pretty easy. You go to the usual spots that the gangs like to hide out in, and then either kill or capture the baddie on the poster, with live captures rewarding you about double the money, but also guaranteeing you a vendetta once they bust out, which I'm gonna be honest is a non-issue, and also they are planning to patch this, if not based on the time the video came out, have patched this already. Apparently it was supposed to be a 15% vendetta rate, whereas for some reason it was 100% vendetta rate, but it's still a non-issue because half the time the person who has a vendetta against you attacks you, and you drop them inside of a minute, and then one of their flunkies has a vendetta against you, and the cycle repeats with you just getting a lot of easy kills. What's really gonna help you bring in guys is forming your posse. You get 2 companions at a time in Weird West, and usually having 2 extra guns is all that you need. Companions have abilities just like you do, and can also be as strong as whatever you give them. Combined with certain perks you can use your golden aces on, your posse is gonna end up being a lot stronger than you are. Not all companions are made equal though. The dudes that you hire for $100 at the saloon aren't going to be nearly as hardy as story characters, and eventually they're just gonna become a money pit as you have to keep replacing them. This will be less of a problem after the first couple stories though. Also, it's really nice that whenever you're trying to do a stealth part for your companions, like let's say you want to sneak in and do something rather than blow your way through a whole mine, whenever you crouch, your companions just automatically become invisible, so no one's ever gonna find you because one of your companions was chilling in the wrong spot. I really appreciate that. And I guess we can't go any further without talking about the combat itself. It's clunky. I think this mainly stems from how it feels like it's a twin-stick shooter stuck in a CRPG, where the controls would normally be fine, but you're on a multi-leveled playing field where line of sight counts, and there's a lot more objects than people that you can hit. I've had a lot of shots ruined because a random vulture was passing by, and suddenly my character's aim snapped up to take out the bird instead of the outlaw I was aiming at, blowing my silent shot. Then there's a matter of how, since it's top-down isometric, sometimes you'll have issues lining up your shot in the first place because an overhead support beam isn't despawning, so I'm just gonna have to hope that I'm about to engage the cultist in the next room of this temple and not the overhanging oil lantern 30 feet in front of her. Sure, it'd be handy to take out the oil lamp because that'll start a nice fire, but I'd like to take out that cultist first so she doesn't raise the alarm. Speaking of that, once you get used to combat in Weird West, there's a lot of stuff you can play around with. If it has oil, it's flammable and can be set on fire or thrown at someone to make them extra flammable. You get a kick in this game, and that kick can be used to send people or barrels filled with nasty stuff off a ledge. Various abilities you get can make things pretty wild, such as an electrified pistol shot being extra painful to people who just stepped in water. Then there's even more environmental factors, such as tornadoes being able to be turned into flame or poisonous cyclones, which are not fun for anyone to be in. You get the idea of where this is going. Something I do like about Weird West that is in contrast to Deathloop, which discourages and ultimately eliminates save scumming in a roundabout way to try and promote player experimentation, which ultimately and ironically is slower and more time consuming than just quick saving. Weird West straight up encourages you to quick save. You can do it right from the pause menu, and while I didn't really use it to experiment too much outside of retrying for better outcomes, it's nice that the game just tells you, yeah, we know you're gonna do this, so we're gonna make it easy for you in hopes that you'll be willing to play around more thanks to reloading being less of a pain. Alright, you've rescued your husband and disrupted the Stillwater gang. Congratulations, now you're a Pigman. You might have encountered the Pigmen in your previous travels. They're soulless abominations of witchcraft where some dude was sealed inside of pig flesh and made into a literal pig-headed beast capable of only grunts, squeals, and indiscriminate violence. You, however, have the same brand that appeared on Jane's neck appear on you right as you were created, and you are capable of human speech and thought. There's another Pigman that can do this, but that's not important right now. You're basically back to square one, but arguably worse because you're in a form that most people are terrified of and used to shooting at on sight. You do, however, get to keep your perk points that you spent golden aces on, and your map still has whatever parts of the map you explored on it revealed, so it's not a total loss. Also, your old stuff is in theory still out there. You know all that stuff you got a hold of, like guns, health items, and even those nymph relics that you used to unlock skills while you were playing as Jane? Well, Jane's still holding on to all of that over at her homestead. Former protagonists are recruitable members of your posse once you've completed their story, and they're some of the best that you can get thanks to them all having special player character abilities. Upon recruiting them, you get any nymph relics that you had left over from the last story, and you can just open their inventory and take all your good stuff back, meaning that so long as you survive the trip to wherever your last player character started, you still have all your gear. This can get really wild towards the end of the campaign when you've got all the supernatural characters who are decked out in high-end loot that you've picked up over the last few stories. So the clunky combat stops becoming so much of an issue because you're really OP. Be careful though. Certain actions that go against the values of previous protagonists or attacking people that they care about will make them leave your party and become unrecruitable for the rest of the game. Oh, and before I forget, it's also a nice little touch in Weird West that if you ever fail to get the big bad from a previous story, they become a bounty in the next story so you can go hunt them down and get a little post-story closure. Something that bugs me a bit about the Pigman story is that outside of a certain story quest where you're confronted by local law enforcement at a town where you need to talk to someone and they threaten to kill you if you don't leave right this instant, you don't get hassled too much for being a freak of magic known for mindlessly killing people. Like, yeah, most vendors will be all like, gee, I'm used to shooting at you guys, not selling things to you, and then we'll let you buy and sell whatever you want. But people are surprisingly tolerant of a pig monster wandering into their town and acting like he's not one of the many who keep attacking people on the trails to try and take them off to make more pigmen. My rationalizations for this are A, they've never heard a Pigman talk before and are fascinated by you, and B, I did a ton of bounties early on to get some cash and therefore had a high reputation early on in the Pigman story. Maybe this is more of a me problem, as after all my interactions with the Pigman and the bounty hunter story, I was expecting an experience more like being a Nosferatu in VTM, where you can't show your face in public at all unless you want to have everyone instantly turn on you for being a freak of nature. It's worth noting that all the news articles that you'll see as you travel around will have stories like, oh snap, a Pigman just wandered into this town, bought a room for a night at the local saloon, and left without a fuss. How strange! By the way, now would be a good time to make sure you're subscribed to my channel and you hit that stupid bell if you haven't already, since we're on the subject of socially tolerated abominations of magic. I do appreciate each and every one of your subscriptions. Playing as a Pigman is also the point at which you know enough of what you're doing to start really dialing in your gear and farming up for the good stuff. You'll probably be all greens and a couple blues when you start the Pigman, but by the time you're done with it, you'll probably be mostly purples with a couple blues, maybe even an orange tier item if you're really determined. It's at this point you've figured out the treadmill. Bounties, mining, trading posts. You do a few bounties to get some started cash, hit the mines not only for ore, but also because there's usually some nymph relics in there so that you can get your skill points up, and then go back and forth between all the trading posts to buy whatever skins you can't hunt up for yourself to upgrade your armor. This is going to be your first hour or two of each story now that you know how to play the game, and even after stocking up on ammo, it's going to be rare that you're hard pressed for cash. There'll be some problems with this later on, but for now, and the next couple stories too, you'll be cruising. Okay, we figured out why we were turned into a Pigman and helped out the soul tree that was being used to make more Pigmen. Time to play as a new character. Meet the Protector, across rivers. He's from a native tribe, but not specifically native to the Weird West. He's part of a group following the source of greed known as the Wendigo, which creates greed as a sickness within men. Like, a literal sickness. People who become touched by the Wendigo's greed turn into what are called ravenous, which are like sentient zombies who are obsessed with hunting treasure and drawing on your driveway. The object of their obsession is the Olividado gold mine, a mine of legend that's said to be hidden by magic, but also contain more gold than anyone could ever mine inside of it. The Lost Fire Nation have it on good authority that the Wendigo is most likely hiding his current physical form in this mine and is trying to draw the ravenous to it in order to further spread greed. This is now your third time getting started in the West. Assemble the posse, hunt some bounties, gear up. This will be the first time that you'll be able to posse up with all protagonists, which are not only free to recruit, but also all have their unique abilities when they're with you. This can make your early bounty hunting laughably easy, as Clarence the Pigman has some pretty solid stun abilities so you can bring him in alive, and Jane the Bounty Hunter has awesome crowd control in the form of shooting everyone until they are dead. It's at this point while you're out hunting MacGuffins that you'll notice a certain random encounter keeps happening. The Witch at the Crossroads. The Witch is a character only known as the Heathen, and will be just chilling in the middle of nowhere and ask some sort of odd question revolving around morals or ethics. These later end up becoming more of physical ethical dilemmas, but eventually at a certain point she just wants to play punchies with you. You can't beat her unless you have a special trinket, and I couldn't help but notice that as soon as I got my hands on that trinket, she didn't want to play punchies anymore. Typical. The Witch seems to know more about the mark and its purpose than you do, but she won't tell you too much. She also gives you random gifts in a box she tells you not to open. I don't know what's in the box because I wanted to get the achievement for not opening it. She and that other little girl you keep seeing everywhere seem to have a vested interest in whatever the heck is happening between all the people who have the mark on them, and hey, wait a minute, that's her right there in the weird little room with all the portraits at the beginning of every story. We'll get into that later on if I decide to make a lore video. So another thing you'll have probably figured out at this point is that the emergent gameplay or the ImSiminess of Weird West is about what you'd expect. This takes on the usual forms of how objects can be stacked and thrown to various ends, and as long as something that needs to be broken with an explosive is hit with any kind of explosive, it'll break, including exploding barrels and even the exploding shot perk for your shotgun, if you're out of, say, dynamite or used all the barrels in the mine already. And finding a key is never the only way to get into a room. You know what, let's make that a new tenet of Immersive Sims, because it's easier to explain than stack boxes. Finding a key is never the only way to get into a room. Yeah, cool, new tenet, yeah. The best example of this is, say, you need to get into a building for whatever reason. Sure, finding the key to the door is always an option. However, so long as the door isn't indestructible, you can always just blast the door off its hinges or break it down if you're willing to risk a little chaos and an impossible arrest warrant. Speaking of illegal stuff, you could always use the lockpicks to go and just pick the lock if you've got enough on hand, and thankfully there's no minigame associated with picking locks. No lockpicks when the door is indestructible? It's cool. If you happen to have put enough perk points into a higher jump skill, you can just get on the balcony and just go in through the balcony doors or the windows, since second story windows usually aren't locked. Can't do that? Well, if you have a rope, you can just go down the chimney like you're Santa or something. Seriously though, that maxed out jump perk is pretty handy, as you can effectively bypass most walls and stairway related bottlenecks with it. Never underestimate the tactical advantage of being able to get up onto the roof. You know what it's been way too long since we've done? An anti-sponsor. And I've saved a good one for you all today. So a couple weeks ago, I get cold emailed by some guy who's like, hey, I saw you had a Patreon. Did you know that we can help you increase your Patreon revenue with digital prints? They're just like NFTs, except you get real money. And I basically heard the word NFT and went into get the fuck out of my inbox mode. It didn't help that they already had what looked like a screenshot of a listing for one of my videos. I told the guy to take that shit down, or else I'm gonna have to contact my legal counsel and have them finish this conversation, which the guy started swearing up and down that it was just a mock-up and that there was no listing. I couldn't check this, of course, because the website requires you to have an account to browse listings, and I wasn't about to give these guys any more information on me than they already had just by browsing, and also I was already pissed enough that after telling this guy to go pound dirt, he tried to pull that, could you please explain to me all the reasons why our product isn't good and be our free market research consultant? Like, goddamn, I hate it when people do that. Like, if you're too broke to like do market research, like don't try and get other people to do it for you. Now, after I told this guy my stances on crypto, he was like, no, it's not actually crypto. It's a digital print. To which part of me was like, what the fuck is that? And the other part of me was like, that sounds like the stupidest thing ever. And last I checked, that very description is an oxymoron. It's either a physical print or a digital image. I'm just gonna tell you now that I do not agree with the ideologies of crypto, NFTs, and putting everything on the blockchain because tech bro. And I am not affiliated, nor do I ever plan to be affiliated with any sort of crypto related project. Just go watch the Folding Ideas video, which summarizes a lot of the grievances I have with crypto, but there's also other stuff like what mining for cryptocurrency has done to the PC market and other stuff, but we're getting sidetracked here. All you need to know is that if you ever see anything crypto or NFT related to me or my videos, it is being done against my wishes. Now I'm going to tell you how to get a digital print of any one of my videos right now that doesn't involve paying $10 to these morons so that you can say you own one of 69,000 JPEGs with no intrinsic value. Step 1, go to Google Images. Step 2, copy and paste the title of whatever video you want a digital print of into the search bar. Now, my thumbnail for the video should show up as the first result. Step 3, click on that result, right click to open image in a new tab, and then save that image to your computer. You have my permission to do this for all of my videos. Make these digital prints your desktop background. Print it out and put it on your wall. Frame it, put it on your fridge. I don't care. If you actually want to support me and leave bastards like this guy out in the cold, I do run that Patreon, as was mentioned earlier, where you can send me money to support me so I can keep on making these videos. Please give me your money. I get to make more videos when you give me your money, and you get cool perks like early access to videos when you give me your money. Isn't that great? Now, back to the video. Now back to the task at hand. We're a Wolfman now. So essentially the gist of it is that one of the local religions in the Weird West has figured out how to turn people into werewolves as a means to defend their churches from the frequent Oneirist attacks as the Oneirist, or is it Oneirist, I'm not sure, while claiming to be keepers of balance or whatever they follow in their immortal leader known as the Authority. They sure like killing other religions in the area. You're an extra special werewolf though, because right as you are transformed, you also got the mark on your neck, and of course there's a prophecy for that. Being a werewolf is pretty cool. You basically get to double tap the abilities button and you get a good 10 seconds to murder everyone to death because your unarmed attacks now do a crapload of damage and you are exceptionally hard to kill. The werewolf does get special abilities outside of being able to transform, which I find were all more on the utility side of things, like a group heal, which I'm never gonna complain about that. Like, it's not as cool as summoning a tornado or a spirit bear, but they get the job done, and if anything, it's balancing things out since the werewolf thing is essentially an I win button in almost all situations. It's a good thing you have that werewolf ability too, because there's a new crisis in the Weird West, and not one that I think was entirely intended by the developers. The world is running out of bullets. You and the other protagonists have been going so hard with all that avenging and bounty hunting that most stores in the West cannot keep up with your demand for more munitions. I discovered this the hard way after leaning on the very effective Sentry Silencer ability for all of my characters, which lets you fire a shot from your rifle that doesn't make any noise, but also does 200% damage to unaware targets. When you combine that with the existing perk that buffs your damage to unaware enemies, you have essentially, like, as long as you have at least a purple tier rifle, you can one-shot pretty much any enemy in the game from across the map so long as they have not seen you previously. The bows are also silent by default but don't have nearly as much range as the rifles, and after all the rifle bullets were gone, the next thing that I was out of were arrows, of course, because next best thing. It's not all over though. You can always just go around farming lesser enemies while you're bounty hunting and using weapons you don't normally use to conserve ammo for the good stuff and loot more ammo off the dead bodies. You also get more bullets from dismantling weapons that you don't want to immediately use, but I found that bandits rarely had rifles or bows on them. It's not an issue right now though, because you again can turn into a Wolfman and turn everyone else inside out. You also might have noticed at this point that, as expected, the stories of your characters are starting to have much higher stakes. Previously, the Protector had to stop a supernatural source of greed that was capable of physically warping land and people alike, but now we're gonna go off and either try to fulfill or avert something called the Blood Moon Prophecy, which depending on who you ask is either going to save or destroy all of the Weird West. Be careful how you handle this though, as you can and will have entire factions turn on you, or potentially multiple factions turning on you and coming after you, which when coupled with the bullet crisis of Act 4 can make things very hard to deal with even with a full squad of fully buffed up protagonists. Alright, last leg of the journey, we can do this. Welcome to the Oneirist story. After 4 stories where the Oneirists were considered a dangerous faction at best to you, you're now playing as one of them and all the pieces are going to start falling into place. Something to note about this campaign is that of all the stories, it's the shortest. Perhaps it was because I skipped the bounty hunting part, but even if we added an extra hour or even an hour and a half to my playtime for grinding rep and money, it'd still be the shortest campaign in the game by far. For reference, the first story as Jane the Bounty Hunter took me a little under 11 hours based on recorded footage, and then the second through fourth stories took between 4 and 5 hours apiece. Constance, the Oneirist story, took me about an hour and 45 minutes, not counting the credits at the end of the game. Like I said earlier, it feels like everything is falling into place, so there's no need to swarm about with bounties, and you'll be pretty kitted and fitted just by paying a visit to your most recent protagonist. And you're gonna have to pay them all a visit anyway, because the main objective for Constance's journey is to assemble all the previous protagonists, dead or alive, which by the way, they can die in the game after you're done playing as them, so be careful who you recruit and what you do with them. And through your powers combined, you become Captain Plot Device. There'll be some pretty easy ones to track down, such as Jane the Bounty Hunter and Desiderio the Wolfman, I hope I said that right. But Clarence the Pigman and Across Rivers the Protector are gonna be a bit of a challenge, where you'll remember that the quick save feature is certainly a thing. Also, it's worth noting here that the bullet crisis of Act 4 has gotten even worse in Act 5, but Constance has all the cool powers that you've seen the Oneirist use against you, such as teleporting around and psychic barriers, but I'll be honest with you all, I didn't bother to use them, because I had an orange tiered rifle and a maxed out sneak attack bonus, which is a good way to remember the fact that the most deadly spell in the magical world of Harry Potter was basically the equivalent of having a pistol. Who needs magic when I have 4570 government rounds? There isn't really much to do as the Oneirist, since the entire plot for Constance's story is in service of the endgame. You even get portals to all the major locations in the West to help you speed things along, since at this point there isn't really much else to do unless you neglected to take side quests. There is one major side quest for the Oneirist called The Weirdness, which triggers with a random encounter with some children in the middle of the desert, and I gotta say, it was one of my favorites out of the whole game. You're essentially on a ghost hunt trying to figure out why people are acting so weird in a town, and it was a good time uncovering the mystery of the blue lights, or how to stop people from acting strangely without killing them before you permanently dealt with the problem. Back to the endgame though. You assemble the posse one last time, and then once you get the book, you get one last random encounter with a heathen who still won't play punchies with me now that I've got the relic of lightning fast slapitude, and she invites you over to her house where all will be revealed. Okay, we're gonna get into spoilers here. I'm not gonna go too in depth, but you know what to do if you don't want them, and frankly, I'd suggest skipping this part if you haven't played the game yet. Going, gone. So essentially all of this was a magic experiment. The heathen and many of the other seemingly minor characters, like the little girl who keeps popping up everywhere and the dude who runs the fighting pit, are all actually part of a group of immortals known as the 21. They've been alive for 4,000 years and have grown tired of life eternal, but find that the magic that made them undying, well, made them undying. They can't die by any means. A few of them get the idea to use the final wish of the wishing tome that you just picked up to straight up end the entire universe, based on the logic that if all of existence goes away, they can finally go away too. That's some big Owlman energy right there. Aleph, the leader of the 21, has another idea. What if through the act of using their magic to live the lives of mortals, you could regain your own mortality and become capable of dying again? It's a long shot, but they decide to give it a go because the other option is admittedly a little bit extreme. You are playing as Aleph the whole time, body hopping across the 5 protagonists of Weird West to live their lives and experience emotions and morality in hopes that when you were done, it would have rubbed off on you and made you immortal again. Depending on your actions throughout the game and how you chose to answer the questions about your true self, Aleph will have regained mortality, and through the use of some more magic, the rest of the 21 becomes mortal too, and they kind of just turn into dust. Cue the end credits slideshow where we see how everyone else is faring. So Weird West isn't exactly what you'd expect from an immersive sim or an action RPG, CRPG, whatever you think it looks like, but it's a very good time that blurs the line between all of those things. As far as debut games go, WolfEye did a solid job on this one, and it gets a full recommendation from me. Just make sure that you remember to go into your options and cap your frame rate on the first boot up. You could have a lot of fun in Weird West just by playing around with abilities and bounties, and the story's pretty interesting without being pretentious like some games are these days. It also certainly doesn't hurt things that it's not a full-priced game, but it's only $40 too. Now, before you go, make sure to like this video, comment about whatever your insane definition of an immersive sim is, and make sure to subscribe so you can scream at me some more about video game nomenclature in the future. A big thank you to all of the saucy ones over at patreon.com/charlatanwonder, where you too can participate in the society-saving act of giving me your money. So please, give me your money. In the meantime, please stay safe, stay indoors, wear your sunscreen when you've got to go out, and enjoy this cat video. the TV boy saga is continuing. We have taken steps to make sure he doesn't hide out behind the other TV. So now he's hanging out on the old console TV where I play my PlayStation. Because if you're plugging a PlayStation into a digital TV, you get input lag and you have a hard time. But this boy, he just needs to be on top of the TV. Sir. Go into your feeder, your new god. As you munch away. I think he's getting skinnier. He doesn't scream at night anymore. Like, this thing feeds him about every 4 hours, like a little bit. That is actually a little less than, like, the amount we're supposed to be giving him, and he always got more because he'd just scream at us until he was fed. But he seems to be taking to this well. He doesn't immediately gobble everything up. He just now has a compulsion to hang out on TVs.